Alexa Donne here, and today I'm going to be talking about commercial versus literary fiction. These are buzzwords I've thrown around in plenty of videos, and I thought I should probably actually define them, because it might not be completely obvious what the difference is, but understanding the difference between commercial and literary fiction can definitely help you in terms of strategizing with your writing and this industry. So in a nutshell, commercial fiction is widely appealing. It has high sales potential, mainstream potential to reach a ton of people. Often it's high concept, which is a whole other thing. I will do a video talking about what is high concept, but think of it as very pitchable, broadly appealing, very kind of easy to be like, ah, yes, I get that, I want to read it. Very often commercial fiction is very fast-paced. It's meant to be read quickly by a big audience. On the other hand, literary fiction tends to prioritize writing style, character, low concept over commercial high concept. Literary fiction's going to focus on style, as I mentioned, theme, kind of artistic exploration of ideas. And literary fiction by its nature, compared to commercial fiction, is far less commercial. Every once in a while, there's a huge breakout literary hit, and it can become commercial fiction, but ultimately the numbers on literary fiction are always going to be much, much smaller. Now, very important disclaimer, I'm talking about either or, a versus, but there's plenty in between commercial and literary fiction. It's not either or all the time. As I mentioned, some literary fiction can be commercial, and there's also all the stuff in between. There's genre fiction, and you can have literary genre fiction, though literary snobs would disagree with me. And part of the whole problem of being like literary fiction is the idea of literary fiction comes out of the development of fiction in general and commercial fiction and snobbery, honestly, which is a whole other conversation. But that is just to say that just being like there's commercial fiction and there's literary fiction and that's it can be incredibly limiting. But it is good to know about these opposing categories of fiction. At the end of the day, the most important thing you need to know about commercial versus literary fiction is commercial fiction is broadly appealing and can make a ton of money, and literary fiction tends to be a specific style of writing and is more niche and has more limited commercial scope. Also very good to know from a career perspective. So, quite obviously, if you haven't figured it out, the money is going to be very different between commercial fiction and literary fiction. Also because the volume is going to be very different between commercial fiction and literary fiction. Commercial fiction writers tend to be on that book a year model because the readership wants a book a year. Also, usually, not always, commercial fiction, I hesitate to say is easier to write because all books are tricky to write, but typically commercial fiction writers learn to write faster. And it is true when you're writing a quicker paced book and you're not as focused on kind of style and the artistic stuff, it can go faster. And honestly though, I actually think it's more the difference of what the two are allowed to do. I think commercial writers have been forced to learn to write faster, and it then seems like it must be easier to write those books. I think there's tons of inherent challenges in writing quality commercial fiction. I mean, I'm a commercial fiction writer. It's never easy. Whereas on the literary side, I think those writers are allowed to take their sweet time to write their beautiful opuses, and I think literary fiction isn't inherently better than commercial fiction, or really inherently harder, but they typically take more time. Publishers allow the writers to take more time to write them. So a literary fiction writer can take 3, 4, 5+ years between books, and it's not a death knell for their career, whereas a commercial writer is going to run into a huge problem because part of the brand of being a commercial fiction writer is to publish consistently so that your readership has more books. So that's kind of a difference between them. But here's the thing, unless you break out as a literary fiction writer, you're never going to make much money. And even if you break out, It's rare. By breakout, I mean like you have a literary hit and then it's that weird crossover of like, well, wait, it's a literary novel, but it was commercially successful. And then those literary authors can get massive advances from their publishers because let's say they won big awards. And so like there's like a cachet to them. So their publisher's willing to pay them. And also they are now a literary breakout. So then it's that nebulous line between literary and commercial. But generally speaking, literary writing, writing literary novels is a long haul and it's usually not lucrative. Commercial fiction really runs the gamut. You can make not a lot of money on commercial fiction or you can make a ton of money on commercial fiction. Generally, the most wealthy and successful authors are writing commercial fiction. They're writing those big books that they can get 7 figures for and hundreds of thousands of people buy them because they are broadly appealing. So those are the main differences. I personally don't think one is better than the other. I love a good literary novel, but I primarily read commercial fiction. They are certainly more entertaining in many ways and easier to digest. I just love high concept fiction. But yeah, oh God, like getting your teeth into like a really good literary novel, there's nothing like it. What I also find really fascinating, if you really think about it, a lot of our beloved classics were not considered literary at the time that they were released, meaning they weren't considered to have literary merit because they were popcorn fiction for the masses. So it's so funny that we might go, oh, well, Jane Austen is so literary. Dickens. They were considered commercial fiction writers at the time. So it's really funny the idea of what is commercial does change. Well, it's commercial if it makes a ton of money and appeals to a lot of people. So just kind of interesting. But yes, for the purposes of you getting into the industry and watching this channel, I talk about commercial fiction all the time because I am a commercial fiction writer. Most people are striving to be commercial fiction writers, and that is kind of where the money and the career is, and just generally why it is a commercial category, and that is my category. So there's the distinction for you. Commercial fiction versus literary fiction. There's lots of nuances to it. It's so much more than I've covered here. I mean, literary fiction really is its own beast, and there's a lot of snobbery and elitism that factors into that side of things. But yeah, commercial's pretty straightforward, broadly appealing books that can make a lot of money. So I just thought I would go into more detail on those two because I realized I dropped those words all the time and had never actually talked about them in detail. Give this video a thumbs up if you like it. I will make more videos kind of explaining some of the buzzwords that come up on my channel all the time. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel, go ahead and do that. I post new videos 2 to 3 times a week. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, guys, happy writing.